So as you see something that you can't change because you are not the creator of their reality, there is something that you can change, and that's the way you feel. And you've been there, because even when someone else is suffering, or even when someone else is afraid, or even when someone else is living something unwanted, you have the ability to focus in a way that you don't feel that way. You can distract yourself, or you can even find peace with whatever it is. And you could actually feel your heart begin to sing again, because that's natural. And in fact, you do that. You do it all the time. And then you feel guilty because it doesn't feel right to you that your heart should sing when someone else is suffering. And we've been saying, and it sounds frivolous in this vernacular, but we've been saying you can't get sick enough to help sick people get well, and you can't get poor enough to help poor people become prosperous, and you can't become confused enough to bring clarity to others. And we appeal to your logic, you know that. But what it really comes down to is you can't help anyone unless you are fully aligned with this energy of your source. And you can't be fully aligned with the energy of your source when you are feeling sorrow, when you're feeling sadness, or when you're feeling guilt. So what is it about you humans? It's so interesting. We love you so much, but you are so willing to deprive yourself of the fullness of who you are. And in this case, you're telling us because others are doing it. Others have deprived themselves of the fullness of who they are. And so I just don't think it's right for me to be the fullness of who I am. And we say, thank goodness Source doesn't do that. In other words, the only reason you could ever feel negative emotion is because you've chosen a vibration that the Source within you doesn't choose. If the Source within you would choose that same negative, full of resistance vibration, you wouldn't feel any separation. Have you ever had a conversation with someone where you're high and they're low in terms of vibration? They feel crummy and you feel high. And the longer you talk with them, it's like, all right, what's going to happen here? Are you coming up or am I coming down? Because one or the other is going to happen here. If we're going to insist on hanging around together, it's a natural process in the desire to communicate. And so you hold your ground, they hold their ground, and there was a sort of a stalemate. And then they hit one of your buttons and down you come. Now you're communicating. And we say, on what level do you want to communicate? And what you're saying is, I feel guilty when I stay up here. I feel guilty. And we say, well, if you can maintain that, one of two things will happen. They'll come up there with you, or they'll gravitate out of your experience. And you say, and if they gravitate out of my experience, then I'll feel more guilt. And we say, you got to get your act together. You got to decide who you are. Who are you? Are you Source energy in a physical body? Are you? Are you Source energy in a physical body? Then why would you put up with these emotions that don't feel like that? And we say you do it out of practice, you do it out of habit, you do it because most of it you can stand. In other words, you can stand most negative emotions because they don't take you to your knees. Most negative emotion is tolerable. You're used to feeling ornery, and you're used to feeling overwhelmed, and you're used to being angry. You're just used to it, and so you put up with it. And so you hang around in those vibrations, even though it's a huge deprivation of who you are, because you could be soaring, and you could be floating, and you could be laughing, and you could be feeling joy. You could be and should be feeling all of those wonderful things. And why for a moment you put up with any of that other stuff is only because you've been trained with a lot of others who have been putting up with that other stuff. Until finally you come to a place sometimes where there's really something that you care about that you can't control through any behavior, and you've got no choice, if it is your desire to feel good, other than to find a way of feeling good anyway. And when you do, you turn a vibrational corner where you finally find alignment with who you really are, and then everything that doesn't match that has to fall away from your experience, you see. We want to clarify something at the beginning of this conversation. When you use the word contrast, you seem to be talking about unwanted things. And when we use the word contrast, we mean variety from which to choose. In other words, in this variety are unwanted things, which help you to clarify the wanted things. If we could convince you that in that contrast and in that knowing what you don't want, that there is a spark that is lit, there is a rocket that shoots from you of what is wanted, and that is a powerful, important, magnificent, delicious, sought after by source and by you gift. But most people, as you're talking about contrast, are not seeing the gift that comes from it, because you're stuck in the contrast. And even the way you began your conversation here is sort of like contrast. Yeah, there's this bad stuff that's happening, and this bad stuff that's happening, yeah, I get it, that it puts stuff in my vortex, but this bad stuff that's happening. And we want you to understand that you've got the emphasis in the wrong place in all of this. If we can convince you that the desire that's born, that fresh desire that is born, is a wonderful manifestation, and that if you would focus upon it, then you would experience the full realization of all of that, then you would start blessing every bit of contrast that gave birth to every bit of that allowed all of that. Are you following? Every conversation that you have comes on the heels of what you're doing emotionally. It's just a fact. And when you make your emotion your primary manifestational goal, then you've got it. Then you've got a handle on everything. Practice it. Make a decision that you're going to shift emotion about something and find a way to shift the emotion, and then watch the series of events that take place. I want to show you how the vortex is the holder of all things that you want, but the vortex is the holder of the vibrational equivalent of them, and they still are going to flesh out for you in specifics. And if you could stop being so concerned about the specifics fleshing out to which you would then have an emotional response, and start focusing upon the emotional response that you have control over now, then you will begin to see how the fleshing out occurs after you achieve the emotional response. We've been saying vortex first, then manifestation. Now we're saying to you, manifestation of emotion first, and then more detailed manifestations following that. What we're showing you is how worlds are created. We're showing you how you are the creator of your own reality. We're showing you how to find the basis of your vibration from which everything else will follow. But if you start not at the basis, if you start out there in the specifics and you don't have control over the specifics, and you don't, then you'd never get what you want. You just complain about contrast your whole life. The most important thing that we want to say to anyone who's in a situation where they are addicted to something that alters their mood or improves their mood, while it is only temporary, is this. First, and most important, is that when there is a powerful desire to feel good, it is not illogical that someone would go to any lengths that they can think of to do it. So the most significant thing we would want to say is, stop condemning yourself for taking action that is for a very reasonable desire, which is to feel better. That's the most important thing. Stop beating up on yourself for having the desire to feel better. There's a sort of making peace with it in that is very helpful. The next thing that we want to say, and this is so important, when you introduce anything to your physical body, your magnificent body has the ability to recognize the intruder, so to speak, and find some way of accommodating it or responding to it. In other words, your body has the ability to cope with whatever it is that you have ingested. And in the coping mechanism, it translates to all of you as a craving. So there are two things going on, and this is the most important thing. Whether you are addicted to sugar, whether you are addicted to some drug, addiction just means a craving for. And a craving for means you've introduced it to your body, and so your body is temporarily asking for more of it. If you can go for 3 days, we're not kidding you, 3 days without ingesting, that physiological craving will cease. But it's not the physiological craving that is at the basis for it. It's the desire to feel good. And isn't that what we've been talking about all day here today? The desire to feel good is the most natural desire in the world. It's just that most people don't understand that they can feel good without having the ability to change circumstances, the circumstances that they are observing that they believe are the reason that they aren't feeling good, they feel powerless to change. And so this is just someone who has such a powerful desire to feel good, who is trying to make an end run around it, who is trying to find some coping mechanism to feel good. And there is more good news in all of that than there is bad news. The good news is that a desire to feel good that's so strong, with an understanding that you can feel better and better and better. So we would encourage anyone who's really wanting to shake an addiction, because there are so many negative ramifications of all of that. Their motive is a really good motive. It's just not working out for them. And so we would say, make a decision. You go 3 days and let your physiological body release its craving for that. And then say to yourself, when you still have the urge, this is not a physiological craving. This is not an addiction in terms of my body has control over me. I'm addicted to wanting to feel good. That's what she's addicted to. We would far rather know someone like your sister who has such an addiction to feeling good that she's trying to find some way to do it, than be like so much of the world that's just given up on feeling good altogether, who are just comfortable with being ornery, who are just comfortable with being pessimistic. We're just comfortable with dreading this and complaining about this and complaining about that. She's in much better shape than any of those people, you see.
Yes.
Much better shape, because her desire to feel good is still alive and well. We just want to find a way to convince her that she can feel good without the drug, that the emotion is available to her. Don't you think it's remarkable? This is a really good analogy. We have heard that drugs, like that drug of cocaine, are illegal in this environment. Is that true? Or are we still behind the time? And yet, enough people want it that it's easier to get than maple syrup. It's in much more plentiful supply. In other words, the desire of so many for something so illegal, don't you find it remarkable that people are finding a way to manifest something because they want it, because they want it, because they want it, because they want it? And we think that if somebody has the ability, like your sister, to organize a pipeline for a steady stream of something that is absolutely illegal, we think she can find happiness. It's way easier. It's way easier, sir. You just got to get it in the right perspective. Good.
All right. And
not try to get there all at once, and not try to stay there incessantly once you get there. Just find a little relief and find a little relief and find a real little relief. But understand that when you desire to be happy, what you're really desiring is to no longer be sad. When you desire to feel empowered, what you're really desiring is to no longer feel disempowered. You're no longer wanting to feel vulnerable. In other words, there are all kinds of those vibrations going on within most of you where you just don't feel all that empowered, and it's that empowerment that you're reaching for. And so when she's asking a question, how can I let go of an addiction to a substance? We say the only way is to replace that substance with the true substance. In other words, the true drug of choice is this drug of alignment. It really is. It's what everyone is looking for, you see. And that is not illegal. It's not highly recommended, and it's not highly demonstrated, but it's not illegal, and it is much easier to accomplish, and it's much less expensive. We've enjoyed this interaction more than words can convey. Be easy about this. It's not as hard as you're making it out to be. Just be playful. The most important thing that we would like you to remember is emotional manifestation. Get yourself into the vortex first, and let the vortex then affect all other manifestations. And once you get it in that order, everything will go just the way you want it to, temporarily. 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 You never get to get off this wonderful ride of becoming more. You're never going to cease the exploration and expansion. And that's just the way we all like it. There is great love here for you. And as always, we remain in the vortex. I liked it.